Hi, and welcome to our webcast for November 2018. My name is Christian Lebré, and this is Amy Asbrook, the director of Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet.
Hello.
And also joining us, this is Taylor Hayat, our outreach analyst, and our, policy analysis and outreach coordinator.
Hello. And the cat.
Okay. Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet is a non-religious organization by and for people with disability and our allies. Our goal is to inform, unify, and give voice to the disability rights opposition to assisted suicide, euthanasia, and other ending of life practices that discriminates people against people with disability. Today's topics: the many problem with guardianship. The many problem with guardianship is our subject for this week, and Amy will help us through that subject.
Yep, I sure will. Okay, so today we're talking about guardianship. Woohoo!
Really?
This is a legal process where decision-making power is transferred from a person who is declared unable to manage their money or take care of themselves to another person who makes decisions on their behalf. Each province has different laws using different terms governing when, how, why, and for how long someone can make decisions on behalf of someone else. And it's very confusing because, like I said, every province uses a different set of terms and different instruments that do different things. And in French, it's all different terms as well. So it's confusing. And of course, everybody has their own way of doing it. There are many variables to be considered in looking at decision-making options. Is the need permanent or temporary? Do the decisions relate to the person's living situation and healthcare, or to their finances and property?
Yeah, because the temporary could be a result of an accident and time to recover, things like that.
Somebody could have a stroke and then they recover their
for
functions.
1 year or sometimes 2 years. There's many ways to do that.
Right, and permanent, it might be somebody who's in a persistent vegetative state or minimally conscious state or whatever, and just can't participate in decision-making process until they recover some more abilities, like to indicate yes and no and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Let's see, is the person completely incapacitated, or can they participate in the decision-making process? Heard that before. Does the guardianship cover all decisions, plenary, that's called plenary guardianship, or just some decisions, and that's called partial guardianship? Is the assignment of decision-making planned or sudden? So is this a situation that, somebody has dementia, and so before they lose their capability, they decide with somebody who's going to be the guardian or the healthcare proxy.
If it's instantaneous, it could be like the other one, accident.
Right. It could be an accident,
a stroke or whatever.
Yeah. Yep. Or a stroke. Yep. Is the change voluntary or contested? Is it something that a person with a psychiatric disability is declared incompetent and doesn't agree?
Yeah. Sometimes the family want, because they disagree with the handicapped people, they want to
protect them,
control their lives, and the people herself or itself says, no, I'm able to do whatever I want with my life. And sometimes that's true. Yeah. And often it's true.
Right. And, if there's generally these kinds of orders err on the side of too much control for the guardian. So that's why we're looking at trying to do this in a different way. And we'll talk about that in a minute.
And sometimes it's why my mother will give away all the money of the family, or something like that. It is her money or his money, depending on the time, or what happened.
Okay, is the change voluntary contested? Is the decision maker a family member or friend, or is it a professional? So oftentimes lawyers are made guardians. There are people who their job is to be a guardian ad litem, and that happens for people who are unconscious or elders who lose their capacity. So they could do it as their job, and they get paid out of the person's finances.
Yeah.
Is the decision maker a volunteer or appointed by a court? That also makes a difference in how things go. And finally, how often will the need for guardianship be reviewed? Because many laws don't provide for a periodic review of whether the person still lacks capacity. And that's something that really should be done regularly, but it isn't always. And that's kind of bizarre.
Yes, it is.
To take somebody's rights away and not to review that
and not
on a regular basis is not
giving
good.
Back what the condition improved.
Right, exactly. In general, planning ahead assures the maximum amount of control. The person chooses someone who can be trusted to help them make decisions and act on their behalf. A power of attorney can take care of financial matters, while a healthcare proxy will make healthcare decisions with as much input from the person as possible. So they aren't guardianship, but they do most of the job of a guardian. And it's a voluntary thing that the person enters into. They choose a person they can trust, and that they know that person is going to respect their wishes and let them help make the decisions. So those are important pieces. Those are important things to remember. A guardianship differs from a power of attorney and a healthcare proxy in that it is usually imposed upon a person by a court. A partial guardianship will preserve some decisions for the person, while other areas are controlled by the guardian. But under the plenary form, the full form of guardianship, guardians have a great deal of power and can even dictate where the person lives, works, and socializes. If guardianship is to be imposed, a supported decision-making agreement gives the person the greatest possible control. And we'll talk about what that is in a minute. Typically, guardians are appointed by courts when someone has been declared incompetent or incapable due to a condition that affects their ability to understand their situation and the consequences of decisions they make. Guardianship began as a way to protect people from making poor choices and from being exploited by others. So that was the original intent, but we're going to start turning that around, looking at it differently. To determine if a person had capacity, courts used to look at evidence that the person was neglecting themselves or putting themselves in danger. And that was some of the criteria that the courts used. More recently, however, the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities has moved away from the protection model of guardianship toward an autonomy-based vision of supported decision-making. In that sense, capacity is not focused on a person's abilities, but is a social and legal status accorded independent of a person's particular capabilities. The decision-making process is a collaboration between the person and one or more trusted others who provide information and can help weigh the options. So it's not somebody saying, this is what would be best for you. It's the person working out together discussing what would be the best for the person. And so obviously the person would have input. And that's
a lot better.
Yeah, it makes a lot more sense. And
yes.
it is less likely to result in abuse.
And sometimes it's not because you are not 100% there, that doesn't mean that you're 100% false.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Under Article 12 of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities states, quote, shall recognize that persons with disabilities enjoy legal capacity on an equal basis with others in all aspects of life. So that is regardless of whether, and I didn't say irregardless, regardless of regardless of whether the person has been deemed capable or not. So you have the right to dictate what happens to you. You may need help, and that's where supported decision making comes in. But the right sticks to you like glue. And they also states have to take appropriate measures to provide access by persons with disabilities to the support they need in exercising their legal capacity. So it's up to the state to help the person. Article 12 also requires states parties to ensure that measures relating to the exercise of legal capacity meet the following requirements. And these, again, are important for preventing abuse and abusive situations from arising. They need to respect the rights, will, and preferences of the person. Makes sense. They are free of conflict of interest and undue influence. They are proportional and tailored to the person's circumstances. So if a person has trouble just balancing their checkbook, the substitute decision maker doesn't make all of their healthcare and financial decisions. That's not proportional to the need. That they apply for the shortest time possible. And again, that's, when it needs to be reviewed, there needs to be a process for that built in. And that they are subject to regular review by a competent, independent, and impartial authority.
Independent
or judicial body.
Impartial.
Right.
Difficult to achieve.
Yeah. Because again, we know how people view those of us with disabilities. We're childlike, we need protection, we are eternally incompetent, and we don't know what's best for us. Doctors know what's best for us.
Oh, yeah.
So when those attitudes are, being expressed by judges who are determining whether people can make decisions for themselves.
Just remember that some doctor schools said that never, ever talk to your patient. Just look at the symptom.
Right.
And for us, it's not the way to work.
Right. Guardians should know the people whom they represent well, or should know them well, in order to make decisions that are in line with what the person would choose themselves. Yet, this is not always the case. Even when family members or close friends act as guardians, their interests may sometimes conflict with those of the person under guardianship.
Yeah, just remember that almost every week in the newspaper, there is some weird story, that abusing or stealing money from elderly or things like that. It's unbelievable the abuse that elderly people receive.
Right.
And handicap are the same sometimes.
Right. Yep. And a few months ago, we pointed out the link between financial abuse of elders and assisted suicide in one of our webcasts. And if you get the printed version, you'll have a link to that webcast. And that was really something that was happening for your mom. And we didn't take guardianship over her. We just talked to her and explained that.
And help her.
And
we help her quite a lot, but it was done. And right now she's doing well.
Right. She's very happy and her dog is happy.
Yeah.
That to me says that things are going well, that her dog is happy.
Yeah.
In comments to the US Senate on guardianship and its alternatives, Not Dead Yet pointed out the lack of reliable data on guardianship cases. NDY mentioned multiple instances of abuses by guardians. The Federal General Accounting Office found that of the 8 cases in 6 states it examined in 2016, $600,000 was stolen from elderly wards. So that's quite a lot of money being stolen from people.
Yeah.
And a review of 27,000 Texas guardian cases.
And remember, Texas is very close to Canada, except for the weather.
Not physically.
No, but except for the weather. But the law, the plus or minus the same. The way people live,
it's
plus or minus the income.
It's kind of like the Alberta of the South.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So it's close, except for weather.
Okay, so a review of 27,000 Texas cases regularly found unauthorized expenses, gifts to family and friends, as well as unsubstantiated and unauthorized expenses. So basically, the guardian is buying themselves stuff, taking the person for activities that maybe the person might not have wanted to go to. That kind of thing. So,
and it is very bad. It's stealing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And be aware, the public, how do we call it in English? The public guardianship. Okay, is sometimes, not always, but sometimes worse, because it's particularly if it's building, they have to the guardianship. It's absolutely a nightmare, because sometimes they doesn't try to rent it, and if the people is under that for 8 years, 9 years. Sometimes the building itself will never be maintained or rented.
The person's property is not being taken care of by the guardian.
All. So at the end of 8, 9 years, 10 years, the building has to be demolished.
Right.
It's unbelievable, but it happened.
Right. Okay, they also gave the example that in 2015, the New York Times reported on the practice of nursing homes obtaining guardianship over patients in order to collect on debts.
Oh.
So basically the administration of the nursing home would say, this person is not competent, we're going to be their guardian, we're going to handle their money, and
we will pay by ourselves and throw the people away after it.
Well, yeah, I mean, they didn't say that, but
what's happened most of the time.
Yeah. And in 2017, the New Yorker magazine reported on a scheme where profiteers targeted people for guardianship. So they said, this person has some resources, we'll put them under guardianship. So they obtained guardianship by having hearings at which the person was not informed that there was a hearing coming up. So they snuck around back and had a hearing where the person wasn't there. They obtained guardianship. They sold the person's property and moved the person into an assisted living facility. And an expensive one. They charged huge fees. They medicated the person against their will and prevented them from seeing their families. I mean, talk about being railroaded.
It's exploitation.
Yeah. And yeah, it's that kind of thing happens enough that we need to really be concerned about it. And it's not a far step from there to asking for euthanasia for a person.
When they have no more money.
Right. So Taylor, you wanted to mention something?
Yeah. When it comes to end of life stuff, I got to know someone recently who wouldn't name her dad as her healthcare proxy because he believed her disability was too hard to live with. I forget what she did. She ended up naming either her mom or her best friend, but could not have her father, because if she had a sudden change in her condition where she needed some kind of device, he would deny it, and her life would be ended before she could speak up about it.
Right. And it was good that she planned ahead and selected a person that she could trust, because otherwise it might have fallen to her father to make a choice. And, you know, court doesn't know that her father thinks that she's incapable or whatever. Thinks that her disability makes her life not worth living. Okay, so in order to remove a guardian, the person must petition the court and prove that they can take responsibility for their finances, healthcare, or other aspects of life that the guardian has control over. In Ontario, this means asking for a reassessment of the decision-making capacity.
And it's done in front of a court.
Right.
And when you go to court, what do you need?
Money.
And a lawyer. Two things that you could not get.
Right.
If you are.
Right, exactly. And, you know, again, if there's no automatic procedure for reassessing a person's capacity, then the person has to take the initiative. And if we look back at the situation where those people were, the profiteers targeted people, declared them incapable, and then drugged them up, you know, person isn't going to be able to go to court because they're sedated all the time. So it's a pretty dangerous situation. Many disability organizations like the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network and the Arch Disability Law Center advocate for supported decision-making instead of guardianship. In a 2016 summit on the subject, ASAN, the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, told the stories of Ryan Keith Tunner and Jenny Heath, who faced years of court hearings while trying to remove their guardians. I'm sorry, I said Jenny Heath, and it's Jenny Hatch. Ms. Hatch was successful and eventually able to leave the group home where her parents had placed her.
Her parents.
Right.
Yeah.
They placed her there. They said, this is what you need. And she didn't want to live in the group home. So she got rid of the guardians and got out finally. But it was probably a huge struggle.
But the assumption in these cases that someone's family might always have their interests and their independence in mind is baffling to me.
Yeah.
For Ms. Hatch, her family was the ones who took her decision-making powers away from her.
Yeah.
I know many people whose family have been used to taking care of all of their interests when the person was a kid, and the family has trouble adjusting and seeing them differently now that they're older.
Yeah.
On top of that, in trying to research all this stuff, I've noticed that law offices dealing with guardianship also list disability as a general term when discussing it on their websites. So it doesn't matter what kind of disability you have, you're perceived to be vulnerable and incompetent no matter what.
Right. And they make a lot of money doing that.
Yep.
And they specialize in doing that. And their specialty isn't about rights for people with disabilities. It's about putting people in a situation, you know, where they're taken care of, quote unquote, but they don't have their rights. They aren't exercising their rights. They're not independent. They're not able to manage their own lives, but they make a lot of money doing that. Okay, there is no national figure on how many people in Canada are represented by a third party under a private or public protective supervision plan. In Quebec, more than 34,000 people, or 0.41% of the population is under guardianship. So 0.41 is almost 0.5% of the population is under guardianship. Applying that percentage nationally, there could be more than 144,000 people under guardianship in Canada. That's a lot of people. Especially, you know, if all of them have guardians and the guardians are getting paid something, And it's
a big business.
Yeah, it's a big business. While some provinces are moving toward supported decision-making, like Quebec, Saskatchewan, and Alberta, for example, Ontario has not updated their legislation in many years, more than 20 years, despite a detailed study by the Law Commission of Ontario that was published last year. And there's a link in our text to look at that report. It's very extensive. It's available in English and French. And it's a very extensive report. It's time to get beyond the belief that no matter their circumstances, disabled people are childlike and need to be protected. Protection can too easily become both literally and figuratively suffocation.
Isn't supported decision-making, consulting friends and loved ones that you trust, closer to what the rest of us who are not under guardianship do all the time?
Right.
We have said a million times, there is no such thing as true autonomy. We don't live in isolation. We discuss big life decisions with people close to us all the time. And while I'm on my soapbox,
yes,
where does the dignity of risk come in?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, if we're going to wrap people up in cotton so that they don't get hurt, where do they get to exercise their rights to take risks? People have that right. Okay. So if you want more information about the subjects that we discuss on our webcasts, you can go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/toujours vivant not dead yet. Visit our website at tvndy.ca. You can email us at info@tv-ndy.ca, or you can follow us on Twitter @TVNDY. Thanks to Christian for helping out, and also to Taylor. And we will see you next time. Thanks. Goodbye.
Bye. Bye.